Sundown towns. Let's talk about it. Colquitt County, Georgia is 71st on the list. While learning about this county, we have to look at the county seat, Moultrie. By 1895, Colquitt County and the county seat was sick with Jim Crow and fits the criteria of a Jim Crow sundown town. Segregation in public spaces, schools, and housing, terror from the hoods, the police, and citizens, violence, or worse. Let's learn history. Our ancestors were enslaved in Colquitt County and created generational wealth for enslavers with their free labor. Our ancestors cultivated the cash crop of the world here, cotton. They also grew food, raised livestock, did domestic work, and showed their skills in different trades like repairs. After emancipation, we began to create community. North Moultrie was in sight, and segregation in 1865 was normal in this brewing Jim Crow sundown county. Our ancestors were forced into the system that continued slavery under another name, sharecropping and tenant farming. Financially, that left us really no better than slavery. Voting was out of the question for our ancestors in this county during emancipation. Threats of mob violence would follow anyone who dared vote it, effectively silencing our political voice for even more generations to come. And in 1894, Mother Easter was finally granted a building for worship after having church services in her home, and they named the church the Mother Easter Baptist Church. We also founded many churches during this time, like the Pleasant Grove Primitive Baptist Church, and now known as the Indian Creek Primitive Baptist Church. By 1895, it was first known as the African Baptist Church, the Friendship Missionary Baptist Church. These churches would be pivotal as our place to worship and gather for generations, as our ancestors were preoccupied with finding our family members that were separated during slavery, building our community, and educating our youth. Jim Crow was ready to turn this county into a Jim Crow sundown county. And in January of 1895, George Cold Hand was lynched. Newspapers say somewhere in this county, but not much more is given about his story. In Jim Crow sundown counties, there was often public acts of terror with mobs literally kidnapping our ancestors and accusing them of crimes. History shows that many of the crimes they were accused of were false allegations. This wasn't about crime and punishment. It was a warning to our ancestors in the entire community to not dare challenge the status quo and don't resist the labor system that they have set up for us. Come back for part 2 as we discuss our communities in this county at the turn of the century and the many lynchings that followed our success. Part 2, Sundown Town number 71, Colquitt County, Georgia. We left off learning about slavery, our churches, and our communities after emancipation, and the lynching that turned this county into a Jim Crow sundown county. Let's continue learning. At the turn of the century, building community took top priority for our ancestors in Moultrie. Our ancestors started joining clubs like the Freemasons, the Odd Fellows, and the Black Women's Club to gather and figure out how they could move our communities forward. But Jim Crow was here and made sure we always knew our place. In 1909, by the Daughters of the Confederacy, a Confederate monument was erected. Not just any monument, but the tallest marble statue in the Southwest Georgia and one of the tallest in the state. Nonetheless, our communities were strong and our ancestors started to make general wealth like the Strong family. This family created a funeral home by the Mother Esther Baptist Church and more businesses followed. Soon, our ancestors had established barbershops, beauty parlors, cafes, grocery stores, and small service shops in Northwest Moultrie. But they lived with the constant fear of night riders, cross burnings, and disappearances. And by the 1920s, the Hoods openly held rallies here. Trying to open a business in this Jim Crow sundown town came with intimidation and harassment from the local white people. We taught our children how to act in public as a survival strategy. But that doesn't matter in this Jim Crow sundown town where you will be over-policed, arrested, fined, and accused of a crime with no due process. So you'd better not be caught downtown after dark in places like Southern Terrace. And in June of 1921, a white mob formed to lynch John Henry Williams for a crime he's been accused of, but never afforded a trial. The local cops found him and moved him out of Colquitt County. The mob wanted to unalive someone, and at that point, it didn't matter who. So they came upon the home of Everett Hill and fired a shot, effectively unaliving him. These people weren't done torturing our ancestors in Colquitt County, and on July 24th, 1922, there was another lynching. Again, accused with no trial. William Anderson was kidnapped by a white mob and unalived. No one was ever held accountable. Come back for part 3 as we discuss separate and unequal education in this county at the turn of the century and the last documented lynching in Colquitt County, Georgia. Part 3, Sundown Town number 71, Colquitt County, Georgia. We left off learning about our ancestors forming communities after emancipation and 2 more lynchings that made sure Colquitt County, Georgia would be entered in history as a Jim Crow sundown county. Let's continue learning. By the mid-1920s, public education took top priority for our ancestors in Moultrie. But this is a Jim Crow sundown county. The hoods were running wild, and being caught at night in your home or being black could result in the end. And on October 15th, 1935, Bo Brinson was unalived by a mob because he didn't want them searching his home for someone who had absolutely nothing to do with him. This case was so heated that the National Guards had to be brought in to keep the mob at bay. They wanted to send a clear message to our ancestors, and the message was, know your place. Our ancestors had to use the back door for theaters, separate seating areas, and restaurants, and the bus stations were divided so they didn't have to see us. Separate and unequal was our ancestors' place by the 1940s in Colquitt County. So we built our own segregated neighborhoods not far from the railroad tracks in Moultrie, like Rat Row. By the 1950s, we had pool bars and barbershops and juke joints by the 1st and 2nd Ave. We founded schools like Union Grove School and the Moultrie High School for Negro Youth, founded in 1938 and accredited in 1942. But the teachers and principals knew that what their students were receiving was unequal, and they began to fight for integration. This wasn't without pushback because this was a Jim Crow sundown county. The White Citizen Council formed to push back on integration. It wasn't until the late 1960s when integration began. This came with the closing of one of our cultural hubs, William Bryant High School. Can anyone share a first-hand account about this place, past or present? Share this video. Tag them in the comments. Let's learn.